Are they financially ready to invest yet?
Your finances won't just stabilize on their own. Like, you have to take the appropriate actions to create stability.
A lot of people are just doing the bare minimum because they're not really sure what to be doing. They're not sure if they should be increasing this or what to be doing with their money.
The stock market will make a loser out of everyone at some point in their investing career. And if you don't have a plan, like, you could go years of just wasting thousands of dollars.
You don't need to be an expert. You don't have to be a broker on Wall Street to be able to start investing. Welcome to Just Another Money podcast with your hosts, Lauren and Nick. We're here to take real-world money situations and break them down into actionable steps you can actually use.
Whether you're budgeting, paying off debt, or saving for your future, we're all about making finances easy to understand and putting you in control of your money. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we are talking about investing. We're going to dive into some situations from real people who are looking to start their investing journey, but really aren't sure how to go about it. Now, before we get into that, Lauren and I did want to share some exciting news for each of us. So for those of you who have been watching the show for a little bit, you might have noticed that my setup is just a little different, and that's because last week, my wife and I have officially moved from California out to Austin, Texas. So we loaded up the car and made the 25-hour or so drive from the Bay Area out to Austin. And so we're officially settled here, but this is really kind of like the next step for us to the home buying process for us. We knew we wanted to kind of get out of California, buy something in Texas. And so we're here now, kind of getting through all the, getting settled with everything, all the new driver's license, new plates, all the new insurances. So hoping to really enjoy it here. But yeah, that's kind of it for me. Lauren, anything exciting that you want to share?
Yeah, Austin sounds like so much fun. And, we just moved to Chicago a few months ago. So yeah, getting the driver's licenses and registrations and everything changed can be a little bit of a pain. But once that's done, it's fun living in a new city. For me, for the new year, I actually did just get a new job. I didn't think I had anything really to say about the new year, but nice. I did just take on a new job. I got an offer this week. So I'm actually going to be taking a week off just to kind of rest and relax before I start my new opportunity later this month. So that's really the only thing new that's happening for me so far in 2025, but we'll see what else this year brings.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, why don't we jump into the first question then? And, just one thing that we wanted to point out, this whole episode, we're going to be talking about investing, but, Lauren and I are not financial advisors. And so please, take everything we say with a grain of salt. You should definitely be doing your own research, definitely be talking to a professional. We're really focused on the educational side of things, really making sure that you have your money management down, your cash flow down. But when it comes to investing, a lot of this is built off of things that have honestly just worked for us. So again, please, take everything we say with a grain of salt, but we're really excited to get into this first question.
Yeah, so let's start. So this one says, am I financially ready to invest? I'm in my late 20s and I keep hearing that I should start investing as early as possible, but I'm not sure if I'm financially ready yet. I've got about $3,000 in savings and about $15,000 in student loan debt, sitting between 4 to 6% interest rates. I make $64,000 a year and contribute just enough to my 401k to get the employer match. Should I focus on building up my savings, paying down debt, or starting to invest more? Or is it okay to start with a little that I can afford right now? I don't want to fall behind, but I'm nervous of making the wrong move.
Yeah, this is a great question. And honestly, I was really excited to start with this one because I feel like this is where a lot of people kind of find themselves once they've settled into their career a little bit. This person said they're in their late 20s. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are in this place where they might have a little bit of savings. They probably have some leftover student loans. But when it comes to investing, they're kind of just doing the bare minimum that's offered through their employer. And just like this person said, they're contributing just enough to get that employer match. But those of you who are familiar with our financial roadmap, this person's actually done quite a few of those initial steps that kind of gets that foundation built underneath you. And now we can really start focusing on the growth. So yeah, I think this person's done a great job so far. Getting really clear on their finances. It seems like they are saving up. That $3,000 sounds like it's probably enough or maybe close to enough to be a starter emergency fund. And I love that they're taking advantage of their employer match. I think that's a really good part that you just definitely don't want to miss out on that. And because they only have the student loans, we're not really worried about any high interest debt. So I would say the next step really for this person, before I would say they're in the they're financially ready to start investing, is let's just make sure you have that emergency fund built up a little bit more. So, they've saved $3,000. Why don't we just set a goal of somewhere around $10,000? That would probably fall somewhere in between their 3 to 6 month emergency fund. And then from there, we can kind of maybe split our focus from saving up a little bit more in that emergency fund and then really starting to invest. But yeah, I think if this person kind of just takes a little bit longer to save up some money, that way you can really put themselves in a good position so that they're not having to derail their plan with investing if some sort of emergency comes up. But I don't know. What do you think, Lauren?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything he said. And I love that the person is asking this question. You know, they're asking, are they financially ready to invest yet? And they're listing out everything. So they're being really diligent about their money and where it's going and wondering what the next step is, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, something you mentioned made me think of myself actually. You know, this person's in their late 20s. And like you said, a lot of people are just doing the bare minimum because they're not really sure what to be doing. They're not sure if they should be increasing this or what to be doing with their money. And that was me most of my 20s. I just had, so the university that I worked for, they had just, it was a pension. So they automatically pulled out of our pay. And that was the only thing I was doing because that was just like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And here we go. So I didn't really even think about asking these questions until, you know, my debt-free journey ended. But no, I love this for this person. They're getting clear, like you said, on, you know, their money and what they want to be doing with it. Now, making $64,000 a year, you know, I paid off all of my debt making $50,000 a year and I had 52,000 of it. So I feel like they could actually get the student loans paid off and then be in a really good position to start investing more, you know, for retirement there. They're in their late 20s. You know, that's not, you know, that's not too old. You're still pretty young. So you have plenty of time to be in the market and get going with your investments. So I don't know. I think that they can, you know, work on, like you said, getting that fully funded emergency fund. Cause my guess is that 3,000 is probably at the lower end. If not even maybe just like a month of expenses, depending on their living situation. So build that up, maybe focus on those student loan debts and then just start investing. And they could, you know, do their 401k. They could open a Roth IRA, do some type of taxable brokerage account, whatever works best for them. But yeah, this person's really on track here, especially asking the questions like they are.
Yeah, no, like you said, I definitely agree. I think once they get that emergency fund built up, like, again, it could be, you know, I would set like a goal of probably around 10, 12,000 would probably get them somewhere that I think would be a solid emergency fund. But from there, you know, I think they could probably split their focus between dealing with the student loans and starting to invest because they do have plenty of time to be in the market. But I would always say like the earlier you can start, the better. And I think it's great that they're taking advantage of the 401k. And so maybe splitting that focus between, hey, I'll make an extra $100 or a couple $100 extra per month on those student loans. And then the rest of my extra money, I'll start dumping into something like a Roth IRA. From there, if this person's able to max that out for the year, they could probably go back into their 401k. That'd probably be a good place just because it's tax advantaged. But you know, another thing we do like to suggest too is looking at just like a taxable brokerage account. Like, no, you're not going to get any tax advantages with that, but like it is something that you can still grow your money, right? You're getting exposure to the market, but you do have some flexibility with it. You know, if maybe this is money that you want to be putting aside for the next, like, I don't know, 10 years or maybe 5 years down the road, like you'll you'll need a new car or something like that's a larger purchase. You can kind of just throw that money into the market. If it's more than a few years, it's probably going to be safe in there. Grow a little bit from there, and then you can still have some flexibility to access that before retirement.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree with you. I think paying off the student loans while you're investing with, you know, an IRA or anything extra like that, it's probably a good idea. 15,000 in student loans, they're going to have that paid off probably within a few years anyway. So they're not going to be hanging around for a long time. But yeah, this person's on the right track, asking the right questions. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, at the end of their question, they said, I'm nervous about making the wrong move, but kind of the three options that they laid out for themselves, like building up their savings, paying down debt, or starting to invest more, like none of those are going to be the wrong move, right? Those are all going to push you further down the road of like your financial journey, definitely in the right direction. So I'd say you can't make a wrong decision here, but there's probably a decision that might get you to where you want to go a little faster. And so, you know, look at all the options in front of you. I think you also have to assess like, what is it that you want to get out of your finances? You know, for me, the student loans aren't a huge concern, but I also know I really appreciate the feeling of being debt free. And so if that's a priority for you, maybe get those knocked out in the next year and then really focus on catching up for retirement. But yeah, I think we can move on to the next one.
Sure.
Love this next question. It is just short and sweet. This person put, what's the best advice you have for someone starting investing?
Yeah, I love this question. And I wish I would have asked this way earlier than I did. I think we all ask this question, right? You know, I think the first thing is don't put it off. So I think a lot of people will feel that they don't have enough information or they don't know enough about investing. So they just keep pushing it down the road. I'll get to it someday. You know what I mean? But then some of these questions we get that they're like 40 years old and they're like, oh, I don't have anything for retirement. What do I do? And then it's panic mode. So, don't put it off, but also don't be afraid to invest. And to not be afraid to invest, you want to be able to understand what you're investing in and what these accounts look like. So what you want to do when you want to first start learning to invest, like what accounts can you invest in, whether it's a 401k, an IRA, a taxable brokerage account. And you can open that where you can open them. Fidelity, Charles Schwab, Vanguard. What about you, Nick? Where do you like to have your accounts through?
Oh, I do everything through Vanguard. And honestly, it was because when I was in college, my roommate in college was like, oh yeah, I have this Vanguard account that my dad opened for me when I was a kid. And so that was kind of just the first account I knew about.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times when people talk about like index funds or ETFs, they always talk about them in terms of like the Vanguard ETFs. So that's just where I started. Honestly, like for me, I just find it easier to keep all my stuff in one place. Like I have my taxable brokerage, my Roth IRA and my high yield savings account all through Vanguard. But yeah, I don't know. Do you use something different?
Yeah, I use Fidelity. And
Nice.
I think the reason I use Fidelity is because I saw my husband's Vanguard account and it was not very user friendly. I don't know if it's changed over the years or not, but Fidelity was just a little more user friendly for me. So I went that direction. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think they're all kind of the same thing, where you can do all your investing or whatever, because I have all of my same accounts within Fidelity.
Yeah.
But yeah, so really you want to start with learning where you can invest, and what type of accounts you can invest into. So really, picking one of these Fidelity, Vanguard, Charles Schwab, you can't make a bad choice here, but going with one of those to open some of those accounts in there. Now, also you're going to want to understand, what are stocks? What are ETF? What are index funds, mutual funds? At a high level. You don't need to be an expert. You don't have to be a broker on Wall Street to be able to start investing. And that's what I think a lot of people shy away from. They feel like they just don't know enough about it to even begin. And none of us are experts, right? So I think that we just need to start there and allow ourselves to start not knowing everything, right? I personally love searching different stocks, different funds on Google. Whenever you just type up the symbol, it shows you exactly the performances over the long term or whatever you want to look at. I also like using Morningstar. Have you ever used that, Nick, to like look up different funds or stocks, things like that?
Yeah, I've heard about it. Never really used it myself, but I've heard it's a really good resource.
Yeah, you can just, honestly, whatever site you want to use, but it just shows you, whatever you want to know about that fund. I like to look at the cost of them. You know what I mean? Like look at what the index funds, like what the costs are there. I like to look at the long-term performance of it. You can really look at a really big picture. And if you look at a smaller picture, you might see a lot more, ups and downs there. But if you really zoom out, you can see what that stock, that ETF looks like from further out, which I like. So what would you say about this, Nick? Where should someone start if they're just starting to invest?
Yeah, no, one thing you really pointed out is to never invest in something that you don't understand. And like my kind of gauge for if I understand something is, can I explain it like in the most simple terms to like a 5-year-old? And if I can't do that, like I probably don't have the understanding that I thought I did. And if I can, then it's probably something that I know enough about to at least start putting some money into. But the one thing that I feel like I overanalyzed it too much before I got in, and I was like, oh, I have to know more and more. And that was kind of stopping me from actually just getting started. And so usually what I tell people is like, start early and start small. Like you want to have more time in the market. It's not about timing the market when it's going down and you want to buy at the right moment. Like you just need to get your reps in, get comfortable with doing it, start treating investing like it's just another bill. At this point in my investing journey, like the money that goes into my Roth IRA every month, it's just a bill in my budget that has to get paid each month. And it's nothing more than that. And if you can start treating investing like that, that's when you really start to see some success through consistency, but also like starting small. And that was one thing that I didn't do. I was like, okay, like I got like $4,000. Let me just throw it all into the stock market. Had no clue what I was doing. And, I talked about this in an earlier episode. I wish I took the time to understand what I wanted to invest in first, what it meant to really meant to be like an investor and someone who invests and all of that comes with it. But, start early and start with something small, right? If it's $100 a month, like that's awesome. Like I think that's a great place to start. You can kind of get your bearings a little bit and start to understand like how the market works. When is the time to buy, which, just to reveal the answer of everyone, it should be Once a month, honestly, like that's what I do. And I think that's what a lot of people do is once a month, I just put my money into the market. I don't care if the market's up, down, left or right, or whatever, like getting into that habit of being super consistent. That's really it for me. But, honestly, the last thing I would say for someone is higher risk doesn't always mean higher reward. And I think oftentimes like people try to look for stocks or companies, I should say, that are going to blow up in the next couple of years. And there's always that saying like higher risk means higher reward. And that's not always the case in the stock market. Like, honestly, like the stock market will make a loser out of everyone at some point in their investing career. And I think the sooner you can get past that, the more you can kind of just settle into your rhythm with investing. But there's kind of like just the boring investments it's not nothing sexy, but it works. And if you stay in the market for long enough, like you can accumulate millions of dollars by just a simple monthly investment into the same boring funds every single month. And that's where I'm at right now. Like for me, it's the same two funds that I buy every single month. And it's boring when people think like there's this complex system going on in the background. There really isn't. Like it's at this point where it's just kind of set it and forget it. It gets billed to my checking account every single month. That's written into my budget. And that's really all there is to it. Like it doesn't have to be complicated. It can really be as simple as you want to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for someone starting out investing, do you recommend a single stock? Do you recommend index funds, ETFs? Like, what do you think someone should do when they're just starting out?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like I think single stocks are something that people should probably get into once they have a better understanding of the market. I don't think there's anything wrong with investing in single stocks, but you are putting all your money, all your eggs inside of one basket by doing that. And if you don't have like the prerequisite knowledge of understanding, okay, what are some good companies that I should be investing in? What aren't some good companies? Or rather, I should say like, what are some riskier or safer investments? I think you're better off just putting your money in something like an index fund or an ETF, which is, you can essentially just think about it as just like a basket of stocks. And there's a basket of a whole bunch of different companies in there. By buying into that one fund, whether it's an index fund or an ETF, you're distributing your money across all these different companies. And so the value of your investment isn't just being propped up by one company, the success of one company. You have some cases hundreds, some cases thousands of companies that are going to contribute to the rising value of your investment. And so personally, like I would say like you don't need to shy away from single stocks, but I would say start with something simple and easy like an index fund or an ETF, and then kind of get your reps in. Like I said, from there, then you can kind of start to mess around with some single stocks if that's something you do want to get into.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I do. I told you before, and I've said this in a previous podcast, that I'm a lazy investor. So I like to, for the accounts that I invest in, I just always do like whatever the Fidelity's version of like the total stock market. Yeah. Just because like, that's just what I like to do. I'm not picking single stocks. I'm not doing that. I like to kind of set it and forget it and not really think too deep into it. Now, I think something else I want to mention here. When people talk about investing, and they have a 401k, like that is investing too. You know what I mean? Like you can start there. You can log into your 401k provider, whoever your employer, whoever the provider is for your employer. You can log in and like pick your investments there. And sometimes they have like an automated thing that will like help you. Do you want to be more risky? Do you want to be more conservative? So you're actually starting to invest there. It's not always just like, I have to like invest in this single stock. Like you're also investing in your 401k. I think it feels like it's not sometimes because it is like, kind of when you're signing up for it, you pick probably what you want to invest in and then you just sort of move on and kind of forget about it. But that's also investing too. So get in there and see what they have available. I know in the one that I have currently, I invest in the same thing that I'm doing right now that I have through Fidelity because it's so familiar to me and it's been performing well. So I'm just going to keep going along with it. But yeah, like you said, you have to stay the course too. The market's going to fluctuate. And you mentioned something about, investing every single month, regularly. That's called dollar cost averaging. So if someone hears that term out there, all it means is you're just going to keep investing month over month over month, no matter what the market is doing. So that's how you're getting the average, because some months it's going to be down, other months it's going to be high, but you're just going to keep investing no matter what the market looks like. So yeah.
All right, taking a quick break from today's episode, Lauren and I have some exciting news we'd like to share with you. If you're feeling stuck with your finances and don't know where to start, we have you covered with our one-on-one financial coaching.
These are no strings attached coaching sessions that you can sign up for today. No ongoing commitment. You simply book a session whenever you need one.
Each call is 90 minutes, and by the end of it, you'll have a clear budget to work with and a solid plan to start paying off your debt. Plus, we'll make sure you walk away with some awesome tools to keep you on track, including our budget dashboard and expense tracker, tracker, as well as our debt payoff optimizer.
And the best part, you'll get to work with both of us on the call. Together, we'll help you develop the best possible strategy forward, answer your questions, and make sure you feel confident about managing your money.
So if you're ready to get a handle on your budget and kickstart your financial journey forward, check out the link in the show notes to book your first session.
We can't wait to get started with you. Now, back to the episode.
Cool. Why don't we move on to the next one?
All right. This one says, where should I start my retirement investing? I'm 35 and just now getting serious about my finances. I don't have much saved for retirement yet, but I finally paid off my credit card debt and have a small emergency fund. My company offers a 401k with no match, but I also keep hearing about IRAs and brokerage accounts. How do I figure out which account to start with, or should I use more than one? I'm a bit lost when it comes to investing. Please help.
Yeah, I would say at 35 with little saved for retirement, like I would definitely say that you have some catching up to do, but the great news is you still got 30 years to let your money grow into the market. And I think this person's really done an amazing job with getting their credit card debt paid off. They have a small emergency fund, like they're definitely on the right track. But in terms of like where they should go from here, like if they have, I would say make sure that you're somewhere between the 36 months. And then once you are, the thing that we've talked about, especially in the financial roadmap episode, which just a few episodes, if you haven't watched that, you should definitely go back to it. But match beats Roth beats traditional. Like that's kind of just like the mantra that I think a lot of investors hear out there. And essentially like if you get an employer match, take advantage of that because it's literally free money. From there, if once you meet that employer match, like sometimes it'll be 100% of contributions up to 5% of your income, right? You've got that solid 5% invested. Maybe we can do the next 10%, which would get you to kind of like that 15% threshold. That's kind of the minimum that we suggest. Maybe you can do the next 10% inside of a Roth IRA. Now, depending on your income, you might max it out, you might not. If you do, we typically recommend going back into your 401k and investing the rest of your money there. There's also some options to go into a taxable brokerage account. Again, like I said before, it's just a really great option to have some flexibility. You don't necessarily have to wait until you're 59 and a half to take advantage of those funds. And some people like to use a taxable brokerage as like a bridge account. Like if they want to retire, let's say at 50 years old, but they can't access their investments for another 10 years, they can use a taxable brokerage to kind of bridge the gap between when they start retirement to when they can actually access those retirement funds. But yeah, I think this person, if they're not getting a match in their 401k, I would look into a Roth IRA. But definitely before any of that, just make sure you have at least a 3 to 6 month emergency fund saved up. Like I said before, it's really just setting the foundation. Then we can focus on growing.
Yeah. Something you mentioned, Nick, one of my previous jobs that I had, they didn't have a 401k at all. So I was maxing out my Roth IRA, and then I was putting quite a bit into a taxable brokerage because like you said, I want to like bridge that gap between retirement because a lot of these accounts you can't touch without penalty until about 59 and a half. So yeah. I started investing heavily into my taxable brokerage because I was like, I don't want to work till I'm 59 and a half. So I want to make sure that I have some money available to me. But anyway, so this person, 35 years old, I know that can be stressful because I'm going to be 35 this year. And I know how that would feel to just be like, I don't have anything started. How can I get this going? I feel like I'm just at the beginning of my investing journey. It feels like nothing's ever going to come of it. But, I love a good investment calculation. So if this person starts at 35, they have nothing. They said they have a little bit. We're just going to go with nothing. And let's say they invest $500 every month for 30 years, which $500 is pretty doable depending on their income. But let's say they start with $500. In 30 years, so when they're 65 years old, they're going to have $745,000 invested. Wow. Okay. Now let's say that they invested $1,000 a month. They're going to have 1.4 million. Now that doesn't take into consideration any type of raise this person's going to get over the next 30 years, any type of inheritance or whatever they may receive. But that's a pretty good chunk of money for starting at 35 with nothing. So I think just being optimistic, and as long as you're willing to, like we talked about before, get this on an automated system, get investing every single month, you're going to have quite a bit of money at retirement. So that's something that this person should be pretty excited for in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like to use those like compounding interest calculators just to kind of map out like, are we on track or are we not on track? You can kind of do a calculation to figure out how much do I think I'll need into retirement. And you can kind of work your way backwards using a retirement calculator to say, here's how much I have, here's how much I need to start contributing monthly so I can reach that goal. Yep. But yeah, I mean, if you're getting into your 30s and $500 is a lot of money, I don't want to downplay that. But if you're in your 30s and you don't have anything saved for retirement, I think you do have to look at the reality of the situation. $500 might be a lot, but not having anything in retirement is going to feel a whole lot worse than having to cut back on dining out, having to cut back on some of that discretionary spending so you can free up some cash to start investing now. So yeah, I think you got to get started sooner than later, especially if you're starting from nothing and you're well into your career, you're settling into your 30s. Like you really got to get started now before it gets to a point where you have to invest thousands of dollars each month just to get to what would be a reasonable amount for retirement.
Yeah, and as your age ticks up, that number keeps increasing. You know what I mean? Like you said. So, but I mean, it is a lot. 500 is a lot, and it's a lot because you're putting it away and you're seeing nothing from it right now. You're feeling it just leave, but you're not really seeing any result from it until 30 years from now. But I'm gonna try to get like any type of side hustle. Like I feel like there's so many different things you can do these days to make money, like on the side of your full-time job, and then you would just put all that money towards investing. You know what I mean? Like I think that's such a smart way to go about it if you don't have that extra $500 a month to get going. There's definitely something that you can be doing on the side, and it probably isn't going to take that much of your time only to make $500 a month. You know what I mean? So definitely get that going before, you're 40, 45, and then waking up and saying, oh no, what do I do? Like you said.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. Before my wife and I moved out here to Austin, like we didn't have to pay any sort of like a monthly pet rental or I shouldn't say rental, pet fee to have an animal with us in our old apartment. So we did Rover like all the time, and to make $500 in a month, it really just looked like we watched someone's dog for a few weekends each month. My wife did it it was set up through her account, but like that, it was 500. It was, we would get anywhere from like $300 to $500 a month. We would stay home. We would watch movies. Like we would take the dog out on a walk. Like it was a really good time. Like you had all the fun of having a dog without any of the responsibility. Cause during the week we could just give the dog back. But that was an easy way to make, an extra $300, $400, $500, which we put into, went into our monthly budget. Most of that went into either saving for a down payment or going into investments. But why don't we move on to the next one? So this person wrote, where do I start investing? I'm 17 and I want to gain more knowledge on investing. I started doing some research, but a lot of the websites I've looked at seem pretty biased and all say different things. I would rather do long-term investments since I will be joining the military right after high school, but I'm not sure how to start.
Nick, if I asked about investments at 17 years old, my mom probably would have fainted, I love that this person is asking the question at 17, and they're so right. You can Google anything about investing and you're going to see so many different things out there.
Yeah.
What to invest in, the hottest stock pick, all these different things. But so someone, 17, investing is super exciting, and I'm sure that they want to jump into it, but they're young. I do like to make sure that you have something in savings set aside before you really start investing like all your money and then you just don't have anything. Right. So once you have like a little emergency fund for yourself set up, whatever that looks like for you. If you're going to go into the military, you're probably going to have your housing covered and stuff, but have a couple $1,000s in there. And then you could start investing after that. So we've already talked about what they need to do. They need to look at the different accounts, maybe just open up like an IRA if they're working now, which they're going to be going into the military and making an income. They could open up an IRA and start as simple as that in a Fidelity or Vanguard account, something like that. And then, like we had mentioned, maybe go into like an index fund or something that's not super risky. You're not picking a stock and then losing all your money suddenly. And then just investing regularly each month. Like you said, it's not going to be sexy. It's not going to be, anything crazy, but you're just learning how to invest and start to flex that muscle a little bit. What do you think for this person?
Yeah, no, I really love how this person wrote the question. They said, I want to gain more knowledge. Like they know that this is a gap in their knowledge and they're really just looking for the best ways out there. And they've been skeptical of the information online. And I think when it comes to personal finance information in particular, you should kind of approach it with a little bit of skepticism because there's so much out there that's like these get rich quick scams or anything like that, where you could make the wrong move very easily by just trusting someone who isn't very reputable is what I would say. Yeah. But I do think that this person should, like you said, save up a little little bit of money on the side as just like a starter emergency fund, something like that. But they are so young that if they got started with, 100, $200 a month, like they can be looking at millions in the future just by starting to, like you said, flex that muscle now.
Mhm.
But I would definitely say they just need to get familiar with the basics of investing, really understanding the difference between individual stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, things like that. Kind of just get your lay of the land so you know what you're investing in. And then from there, like I would really come to the understanding that investing is for the long run. And I'm glad that this person said that they want to make long-term investments because they are going to be in the military. But yeah, I think a lot of people, we talked about this before in our Busting Financial Myths episode, where people think that the stock market is a lot like gambling. I think that if you are investing for the long run, it could be the furthest thing possible from gambling. I think it's when you're trying to turn $5,000 into $10,000 by the end of the month, that's when it's really starting to look like gambling. Because, in the short term, you don't know if the stock market's going to go up or down or whatever. And I think anyone who says oh yeah, tomorrow or next month or next year, it's going to be at this certain level, like that person's usually lying in my experience. We don't know what the stock market's going to do in the short term, but in the long run, I think most people would agree, and history would show it, that the stock market is going to go up and to the right, meaning that it's almost always going to continue going up, barring any sort of like world disaster, right? And even then, even things like the 2008 financial crisis or when COVID happened, right? You can see massive dips in the market, and you can go back to other huge events like 2001, the World Trade Center, right? You can see so many dips in the market, and you can see that it's always recovered and blown up past that. So I think this person would do well to really just understand the basics, understand some market psychology, like what does fear do to the market? What does uncertainty do to the market? When the market's down, is that a good opportunity? Is that a bad opportunity? Things like that to really get their bearings before they start investing.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Nick, let me ask you, let's just take a side note here. I see some younger people that I've talked with, and they have a financial advisor, whether that's through like a Edward Jones or whoever, and they have like a Roth IRA with like a financial advisor. Now, my question is, a lot of people think that you have to have one to learn how to invest, to know what you're doing with stocks. Do you think that someone like this needs a financial advisor? Like, talk me through your thoughts on that.
I don't want to downplay like the value of a financial advisor. No, but I don't think that when you're first starting your investing journey, I think you're better off learning the basics on your own. And then once you start to get to like a higher level of investing, that's when I think a financial advisor could really be worth it. But I see so many people who are doing such simple investing, and yet they're wasting thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars a year, because certain financial advisors, like they'll take a percentage of your portfolio each year. And that could be that could make you lose out on millions of dollars of growth in the long run, just by taking out that couple of thousands of dollars to pay your advisor each month, or each year, I should say. I would say that it's best to start early. It's best to start simple. And then once you get into maybe some higher level, you want to start looking at different types of portfolios, different blends, or you want to start preparing as you get closer to retirement. That's when I think it's maybe more worth it to work with a financial advisor. But I would say for the vast majority of people, like 1, 2, or 3 funds could cover pretty much everything that they need. And then maybe working with someone as they get closer to retirement, 50 plus years after that, so that they can make sure that their allocation is right. They have enough cash reserves, things like that. But I think when you're first starting out, like you're better off just learning this information on your own.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people just feel like, oh, I don't know this stuff, I'm going to ask a professional. And that's great. Like you said, I think, the older you get, the more you need one of those professionals to help you balance out and have a more, conservative portfolio. So you're ready whenever you're retired and you're not in like, any type of risky investments or anything like that. But yeah, I think someone at 17, they've got a lot of time until retirement. And of course, with the military they're going into, they're probably going to have some other really cool retirement accounts through them as well. So this is just going to be icing on the cake for them. But
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, let's jump on to the next situation here. So this one says, how do I invest with a fluctuating income? It says, I'm self-employed and my income can be pretty inconsistent. Some months I make enough just to cover my bills, and other months I have extra cash left over. I've been thinking it's time to start investing for retirement, but I'm not sure how to approach it with such an irregular income. Should I wait until my finances are more stable, or is there a way to invest without overcommitting?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I love this question, Lauren. As you know, I'm self-employed, and this is exactly how I felt when I first started my career. And someone who's as someone who's been self-employed, like their entire working career, I can honestly say that like your finances won't just stabilize on their own. Like you have to take the appropriate actions to create stability in your finances. And so I do think this person should probably wait a little bit before they start investing to create that stability. But from there, I think they should get started right away. But when it comes to creating some stability for your finances, if you are self-employed, like I really think you need to get clear on how your income fluctuates. Cause you know, this person says that they have some irregular months with income. I think you need to get a really clear understanding. What do those highs look like? What do those lows look like? What is like your kind of monthly average for the last 6 to 12 months? Then you can really start to plan ahead once you get into those higher months. You know, like let's say that you know it's going to take you about $4,000 to cover your expenses. Some months you make maybe as high as $6,000. Other months you make as low as like $3,000, right? Once you are able to cover your expenses, anytime you make more than that, you really got to take advantage of that particular month, setting aside some of that money so that when those low months come, which if you're self-employed, you know there's always a slower season. There's always going to be low months. You really want to have some funds to pull from. And I think if you can start getting comfortable with doing that, start getting familiar with that process where you have some extra funds to the side, that's how you start to create the stability to where low months, high months, they don't affect what you're doing this month because you've set aside that money. And those high months are really just, you know, those are great months. Those are icing on the cake. That's when you can start putting that extra money towards your financial goals, towards investing, towards saving, whatever it is.
Yeah, I love that. Now, Nick, you have a good perspective on this because I'm not self-employed, so I don't have to do this. But so when this person or whenever you start to have your cash reserves and then you get a little more consistent with that, so you have your cash reserves, but your income is still like, you know, potentially going up and down some months. On the months that it's up, do you typically invest more? Should this person invest more that month because they have access to it and now they have their cash reserves for the lower months? Or how would you approach that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, once they have some money set aside to deal with the low months, the high months, whatever it is, at that point, I would say if they're very confident in what I usually call your baseline budget number, you know exactly how much you need to get through a single month. Once you've made more than that in a month, that's when you can start taking that money and doing something with it, right? And again, it could be working towards some savings goal. It could be another business financial goal. It could be investing. But once I have made more than my baseline budget number, I know I'm covered for the month. That's when I can start taking that extra money. And for me, a lot of it goes into either my business savings, personal savings, or investments. Usually, or at this point where in my career where I'm at, my baseline budget number is also going to cover, you know, some discretionary spending for me. It's going to cover to make sure, you know, my wife and I can go out and have a good night or whatever it is, right? So when I make more than that threshold, all that money is just extra and I can put that into investments or savings or whatever it is.
I love that. And I love that this person's asking the question, you know, should they wait till they're more stable? But, you know, I think you're right. I don't think it's ever going to be like 100% stable. I think a lot of people are like, okay, like, I think I'm going to wait till this point to do this. And it's like, is that point ever going to get there? I think you just need to start now and then just slowly work your way up to, you know, being able to invest as much as you want, but you just got to start somewhere. So yeah, I love your response to that. And I think that you have a really good perspective because you're somebody that has the irregular income like this.
Yeah. And, you know, when this person says, should I wait until my finances are more stable? Like, you do want to create stability, but you also don't want to like put this off entirely. You know, I think starting with $100, like I keep saying that because it's honestly so true. Like, especially as someone who's self-employed, like you really gotta be on top of your retirement investing because no one else is going to do it for you. You don't have access to like traditional like 401ks, things like that. You are the one responsible for your retirement, like solely responsible for it. And I think the sooner you can get into the habit of just investing regularly each month, the sooner you can work that number into your baseline budget number or whatever it is, the easier it's going to be down the road. Because I think a lot of people get into this situation as a freelancer or whatever they are, where they've made more than enough to cover their bills, but they don't really have a plan for what they're doing with the rest of the money. And then, you know, by the end of the month, they don't really have anything to show for it. And I think that's such an unfortunate situation because especially if you're self-employed, like there's no income gap or there's no income cap, I should say, on what you can earn. And if you don't have a plan, like you could go years of just wasting thousands of dollars because you don't have a plan. You know, you spend in everything you bring in. You spend everything you bring in, and it's not a good cycle to be in. So the sooner you can get those good habits, those consistent habits in place, the better off you're going to be in the long run.
Yeah, no, I love that perspective.
Cool. Why don't we move on to our last question for the day? So this person wrote, should I pay extra on my mortgage or prioritize investing? This is a really hot topic, actually. I'm 27 years old. My Roth IRA is maxed out and I have an adequate emergency fund. I also have about $30,000 in a high yield savings account earning about 4%. I owe just around $250,000 on a 5% mortgage. Is it smarter to invest the $30K into VOO or dump it towards my mortgage? And just for those of you who aren't familiar, VOO or VOO is Vanguard's S&P 500 ETF. So it's like an index fund. It's a basket of stocks that tracks the S&P 500. But Lauren, what do you think?
Yeah, I love this question. And like any question that I get, like, should I pay off this debt or focus on this? I really like to think about or ask the person, decide how you feel about paying off the mortgage or investing. Like, which way are you leaning? I typically like to start there and ask that question first, because I think that really gives a lot of the motivation of which way you're leaning. If you're super amped about paying off this mortgage, then maybe that's what you do. You know what I mean? If you don't care about your mortgage and you're just kind of like, it's a monthly payment I have, then, maybe you invest this. Whatever you do, I'm probably not just going to dump $30K into VOO, right? I'm probably going to dollar cost average that a little bit into the stock market rather than putting it in all at once. So we talked about this, in a previous question, but dollar cost averaging is really just investing, regularly each month, regardless of what the market is doing or what the share price is. So you're catching the ups and downs, aka the average. You know what I mean? So personally, a 5% mortgage isn't terrible. I think everybody, since the mortgage rates have dropped, since 2020, I think everybody is now thinking like 5% mortgage is just terrible. But I think that's like the average if you look over like the last 10 years. So, I don't think it's something they necessarily have to pay off right away. But maybe they could work on, both of them if they want. Like they could put a little bit into, pay off a little bit more of their mortgage if they want, maybe a few $100s more or an extra payment, once a year even. And then put a little bit more into VOO or whatever they want. But I don't think it's necessarily one way or the other. Maybe this person wants to kind of focus on both at the same time here. But it's kind of up to the person and what their individual thoughts are on this. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think people kind of have aren't taking a large enough like view of the situation. Like, yeah. We were in such a good place with 2% mortgage rates that people don't realize that mortgage rates have been significantly higher for, for several years in the past, right? Being at 5% does suck. And your mortgage payment is significantly more than it would be if it was at 2% or if you're at 6 or 7%. But it's not that far off from being like roughly right in the middle of the height of where things were, 20, 30 years ago. There was periods where mortgage rates were over 10%, right? And that was terrible. And so when it dropped down to 8%, people were like, oh, this is so much cheaper, right? Now, granted, like home prices have gone up dramatically, but just things to keep in mind, like perspective is all I like to say. But with regard to this question, like I've gone back and forth on this over the years, and really it's because you can kind of take two approaches. You can look at like a purely mathematical approach, or you can look at like a assessing risk approach, right? And I think when you look purely mathematically, like you leave out a factor of risk because there's not like you can't assign a value to risk and add it into your equation, right? Yeah. Risk is determined by each individual person. What do they think is risky? But if we're going to look at this like purely mathematically, right? You're earning 4% in that high yield savings account. Your mortgage is at 5%, so you're losing 1% there. But then you could also earn anywhere from like 8 to 10% in the market. So purely mathematically, it does make more sense to put that money into the market. You kind of make that spread or that difference between the 5% under your mortgage and the potentially 8 to 10% that you're earning in the market. Like I said, like you're really not factoring in risk and what that does for you. And what I think a lot of people don't consider is like they look at their situation exactly how it is today and they assume that that's how it's always going to be in the future. And what happens if you lose your job? If you had paid off your mortgage, like that's going to be a whole lot better of a situation than if you still have your mortgage payment and no income, right? But on the same token, like you could put all this money in the market and that could make a huge difference 10, 20, 30 years down the road. I feel like where I'm at today, though, I'd like you said, I'd probably kind of just split the difference. Like maybe I would take like 10 grand of this, put it into the mortgage, like figure out what's an amount that would actually knock a few years off of the life of my loan. And then I'd probably just dollar cost average the rest of it into the market. I would probably in either case refrain from doing all of this at once, right? I wouldn't put all 30K into the mortgage or all 30K into an investment. I'd probably do this over the course of a year just to see how things are going. I can retain some cash as I'm doing this to make sure that it's still the decision I want to be making, in 5 months or in 6 months. I think, Lauren, you said it best. Like it's really going to depend on what your goals are. And I think, you can hear arguments from both sides. You can hear all the pros, all the cons. Like, at the end of the day, it's really going to depend on what matters most to you. Like if being 100% debt free is a goal that you've always wanted for yourself, then that's the goal, and you can go on to your next financial goal after that. And for some people, like having a mortgage isn't as concerning as not having more money into the market. So I think you got to assess where you're at and kind of just take it from there.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only way I ever push somebody to like pay off their debt is if it's like credit cards, just because the interest is super high. But I'm not super concerned about this mortgage at 5%. So I'm pretty open about what this person wants to do, or whoever, like I said before, anybody who asks the question about debt versus paying something else, I'm like, what do you want to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you have to make that decision for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that wraps up this episode of Just Another Money Podcast. Now, just one simple ask. If you found some value out of it, if you got a good laugh out of today's episode, consider subscribing and share this with a friend. That's really going to be the best way you can help us grow.
Yeah, and if you want to have your money questions answered on the show, you can visit our website, justanothermoneypodcast.com, and click the Submit a Question button. And don't forget to join us for another episode of Just Another Money Podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.